Sherman Alexander Hemsley was born February the 1st, 1938. He's an American actor who's most famous for his role as George Jefferson on the CBS television series All in the Family, which eventually spun off to The Jeffersons, and he played Deacon Ernest Fry on Amen. Also, a variety of movies and other sitcom goes to his credit. Well, today on Hollywood Stories, we take a look at the life of Sherman Hemsley, better known as George Jefferson. Stay tuned.
The dream of being one of those recognition never recovers the public's
Hello, I'm David Jacobs, and welcome to the Hollywood Story, the story of Sherman Hemsley. Hemsley was born February 1st, 1938. He was born and raised in South Philadelphia by his mother, who was a factory worker. He dropped out of school and joined the Air Force, where he stayed for 4 years. When he left the Air Force, he moved back to Philadelphia, where he worked in the post office during the day, and at night he worked as an actor. He then moved to New York, continuing his work at the post office in the daytime and at night also working. He starred as the character Gitlow in the early 1970s Broadway play Purlie. While Hemsley was on Broadway with Purlie, Norman Lear called him in 1971 to play the role of, you guessed it, George Jefferson, on a burgeoning new sitcom called All in the Family. Hemsley was reluctant to leave his role as Purlie, but Lear told him that he would hold the role open for him as Hemsley joined the cast for 2 years. The audience loved Hemsley so much as George Jefferson in his few appearances on All in the Family that Lear came up with a new idea. He actually created a spin-off called The Jeffersons. Now Sherman Hemsley had a license to be all he could be with the role of George Jefferson.
I told you this morning Florence invited her new boyfriend over for dinner.
Oh, I forgot about that. I didn't want to.
The characters of Hemsley and co-star Isabel Sanford, also known as Louise Jefferson, were so successful they were given their own spin-off series from All in the Family to The Jeffersons, less than 2 years after Hemsley joined the cast. Such was Hemsley and Sanford's compatibility and credibility as a married couple that no one seemed to notice or care that in real life, Sanford was 20 years older than Hemsley. Here's Hemsley as he explains how he came up with the name Wheezy as a nickname for Louise.
Oh, that came about, when I was in Philly, I knew this girl named Louise. We used to call her Wheezy. You know, I had a crush on this girl. She was a couple years older. And it just popped in my mind one day. I said, Louise. And I asked Don Nichols, the executive producer, was sorry if I call her Weezy. He said, oh, Weezy, he's from England. I said, yeah, sure, that sounds nice, you know. So I started calling her Weezy. Worked, and then it caught on. And Isabel liked it. You know. I didn't know if she would like it or not. She didn't care. Weezy. All right. And then I was the only one to call her Weezy. Yeah.
The Jeffersons proved to be one of Lear's most successful shows, enjoying a run of 11 seasons before its cancellation in 1985. What would Sherman Hemsley do now after The Jeffersons? Coming up next on the Hollywood Stories. Welcome back to Hollywood Stories. I'm David Jacobs. After a successful 11-year run of The Jeffersons, Sherman Hemsley became a household name. This was a good thing, but it also served as very disturbing for Hemsley. He became largely typecast as George Jefferson, but he continued to work steadily after the show's cancellation in 1985. He teamed up with the show's original cast members when The Jeffersons moved to Broadway. Although Sherman Hemsley enjoyed much success on Broadway playing George Jefferson, he found much disappointment in television because he couldn't find a job. All the studio execs could see was George Jefferson. This brought much distress. until 1986, when Hemsley joined the cast of Amen, where he played an unscrupulous church deacon much like George Jefferson, as he played Deacon Ernest Fry.
Velma, come on! Everybody will be arriving in a minute. They're going to want coffee and stuff.
Cafe? Si, padre, si. Subito, subito.
Velma, for the past 3 weeks you've been speaking only Italian.
You can't speak it well unless you speak it all the time.
Oh, yeah? Well, if you want to speak it all the time, marry Chef Boyardee. We speak English in this house.
Sherman Hemsley seemed to have found his way back to success, as George Jefferson seemed to play Ernest Fry, as he teamed up with veteran actor Clifton Davis, as they enjoyed 5 years in prime time on NBC. The show was canceled in 1991. Hemsley on the death of co-actor Isabel Sanford, coming up next on the E! Hollywood Story.